Hi everyone, in this video I am going to post some references of two videos I saw recently on social media regarding something, and I have actually seen more than these two videos, but unfortunately some of those videos I saw many months or years back. That's why searching for them might take me some time, but I put these two videos and I'm going to link them here because they are an indication of something that's happening globally to many people, not just these two families. And many people are actually chronically unaware about what has been impacting the health of their loved ones or even their own health. Because the issue that I'm going to talk about in this video is, I've already talked about it in other videos, but using these two videos as references, I want to talk a little bit more about this topic and to make people understand what this problem is about. So the topic is actually related to pesticide exposures from our daily lives and environmental exposures related health issues that develop chronically in our bodies. It just doesn't develop simply in the bodies of children, though this video is about the pesticide exposure that happens to small children, and it's more serious currently for the current generation of toddlers and infants, because many parents, when they are new parents and are in the journey of learning new things about their kids, they find the basis for educating themselves based on what their parents knew about certain things. But currently the problem is, even our parent generation has been ignorant or less aware in our lives, because of which there's a lot of misinformation or confusing information surrounding pesticide exposure related health issues, which is why I'm making these videos, because this is a topic, if we don't address it the right way, kids can get mistreated, kids can have wrongful consequences on their mental, physical, and other health factors. And all of this could be developing in their body so slowly and so insidiously that eventually, when some real health harm occurs or a real severe health harm occurs, parents may not realize why it's happening. But all of this is actually really preventable if the right steps and the right approach is taken to help people resolve this chronic health problem that has been developing globally, not just for kids, for adults, elderly, everyone. But right now I'm just focusing on the kids because their health is at the most at stake, because they are tiny bodies, much smaller than us. They have little less developed organ systems right now when they are tiny infants and toddlers, and that's why at that age the health harm of all these chronic exposures to pesticides can be much more harmful than it would be for an adult like me, who has a 10 times larger body than theirs possibly, or even an adult like my father's age who are in their 70s, who have also lived on an earth where pesticide usage was much less than on an earth where pesticide usage has reached and crossed his threshold of health harm on all of us. So what does the first video, where the mom is describing what her child is doing, in that she described that her child is sometimes she gave the child a timeout, and the reason why she gave the child a timeout was because she felt she isn't sure actually whether the child is got some normal toddler related emotional management issue, or whether he's highly energetic, or whether it's a ADHD like thing happening to him, that she hasn't examined yet about her child. And if she wants to examine it, eventually she might go and get some doctor help to find out about this, or a therapist to find out about this eventually, if it is at an unmanageable level. But until it becomes an unmanageable level, what do all parents do? All of us, when we encounter some either anger problem or emotional health problem or physical health problem in our small children. I have taken care of kids as a preschool teacher briefly in US, and I have also worked as a pharmacist in US. That's why I am giving this information based on my educational work and also some life experiences where I have sometimes caretaken small toddlers of my cousins and sisters. So as a result, I understand how parents think, and the track at which even how healthcare providers think when a child comes to a healthcare provider for a health issue. So even though normally people will try to either manage it on their own or seek a doctor or a therapist for behavioral health issues of their kids, sometimes what all of us have been unaware so far, even it took me almost 5-6 years and over 10 years of experiencing different kinds of pesticide exposure related health problems, both range, some of which happened to me in US, some of which happens to me currently in India, as I currently live in India. And in both these places I have experienced chronic pesticide exposure related health issues, and that's why I'm making this video. So the mom thought that the child is being a toddler is either being a hyperactive toddler, or he might have ADHD, or he's having an emotional health issue. And the symptoms she described, some of it is she felt that he was not in his body movements were uncontrollable. The father thought that maybe he has ADHD like symptoms because the father has likely had those symptoms. And also she described that the child's face was getting very red and he was sweating. And as a result, she normalized it, thinking it might be a emotional or behavioral health issue, and him not being able to manage his emotions and his body is the reason why she gave the child a timeout. Now let's forget the timeout related thing and whatever else some of the comments in that video came up with about how to raise a child, but I am trying to address this issue because all these symptoms that she actually described about her child, and I have also posted a video of another child who is not hyperactive, but this other child is also experiencing pesticide exposure related health issues, and both of which can happen, and they're both similar age children. One is possibly like a 4-year-old child, and the other is probably a 2-year-old child. But despite their age difference being near to each other, they are manifesting a little bit different symptom because their exposure levels to the same pesticides might be different. But what are the symptoms that chronically pesticides can cause in any adult? Usually, if you look up at a book of like my pharmacy books, when I studied, I have one bachelor's degree from India in pharmacy. I have also a master's degree in pharmacology from US. And in my pharmacy books that I have studied in India and in US, and also for other licensing exams that I had to study about this issue, the general symptoms and general perception of all doctors or healthcare providers regarding the pesticide poisoning issue is that people perceive that most of the people who are getting pesticide poisoning or pesticide exposures are either two categories. One is acute poisoning and the other is chronic poisoning. Acute poisoning means someone like a depressed housewife who suddenly ingests a whole bottle or of a pesticide containing liquid for committing suicide. That could be a acute poisoning. Acute poisoning could also be someone whose family drugs them by giving them some pesticide without them knowing they got the pesticide exposure, and suddenly they will get all these heavy symptoms from high pesticide exposure. And in the acute poisoning stages of the organophosphate pesticides, which are the most commonly used pesticides globally, it can be used in our homes, it can be used in our workspaces, it can be used by our municipalities for spraying on trees to get rid of bugs and insects, and it can be used in the gardens, it can be used in home gardening, it can be used for house maintenance, it can be used for maintenance of a facility, it can be used even in our retail stores for keeping our retail stores and foods clean, it can be used by the transportation industry for when they are transporting our food, water, clothing. It can be used by the transportation industry that we use while we are traveling to different places. So pesticide use is very prevalent, and its use has been normalized for nearly 60 to 70 years globally in many countries. Because of this reason that it has been used for so many years and decades of our life, all of us who are in our midlife, or even our parents who are in their 70s or 80s, all of us have normalized usage and the impact of pesticides in our lives. Pesticides, in fact, can cause heavy sweating. Right now I'm sweating and feeling a little hot because I have some health issues going on in my health, and one of which arises from pesticide exposures in my daily environment. And how does, as I said, because pesticides are used so normally, if my municipality which was using pesticides, and they usually use pesticides during this summer months and during the rainy season month in India, at a time in these months of May to July, August, a lot of pesticides are used by the municipalities of the city in which I live. Because of which, what happens is these pesticides that are sprayed in the gardens and in the locality now begin in the air of this area, and sometimes when the rain happens, it goes into our underground water supply, both of which, now if I have the underground water supply impacting my home water supply, I get pesticide exposure every time I bathe in the water. I use that same water for cooking, or if I don't use it, if I'm buying food from a restaurant or a hotel chain or whatever, if I'm getting like a pizza or a burger and they have used a pesticide contaminated water, then all my food also has that. If the water manufacturing company doesn't know there's pesticide in their water, even if I drink bottled water, sometimes I can get chemicals in the bottled water itself. If I am bathing in a water which has pesticides in it, then I will get these sweaty, like I'm sweating actually, but very mildly sweating, so it's not visible in this video, but I am in a mild sweat like phase right now, where because of exposure to chemicals like pesticides, I'm sweating a little bit because my body wants to eject this pesticide out of my body. So in acute poisoning or even in chronic poisoning, because pesticide is a chemical that is not natural for our body wants to eject it out. And that's why anytime you have exposure, be it in micro doses or macro doses, where you have suddenly ingested a whole bottle of pesticide, in both cases our body wants to eject it out. It wants to clear away this toxin because pesticides are harmful to us. So this baby boy whose mother is describing that his face has become red. Why can his face become red? While I'm sweating, I'm also feeling overheated from the exposure to the pesticide. And because I'm feeling overheated, and I'm actually also turned on the AC of my room, but despite the AC being on, the AC is not giving me enough coolant relief, because the AC also has some chemicals in it which is also harmful to my health. So when a child or an adult has exposure to some chemicals that are harmful to their health, our body wants to launch a defense mechanism against it. It can be the same defense mechanism that is used when we have exposure to a virus, exposure to a bacteria. The same immune system will also launch a defense against chemicals also. So if there are chemicals in my environment that are harming my health, my body's immune system launches a defense mechanism, and that immune system's defense mechanism sometimes can cause us to have redness and heightened inflammation inside our body. And this heightened inflammation can cause someone's face to look red if they have that skin tone where the immediate immune response is showing up in their skin. So you can if you have a fairer skin and more sensitive skin, your immune response of, I'm feeling just hot right now, I'm extremely feeling hot, I'm mildly sweating, and this because I have heightened inflammation. This heightened inflammation tests also I did when I was in the peak time of heightened inflammation. I was sweating profusely, continuously, because the body wants to detox. So the pesticides that are water soluble will completely start getting detoxed slowly by the body via the sweaty, watery sweat that is coming out. But along with my sweat, any chemical pesticides that might be in my body's organ systems or in my cardiovascular and circulatory system, that also starts getting sweated out. So that is one response for someone who has a lot of toxins in their body. But right now, because I have mild toxins, I'm getting mildly sweaty and I'm feeling overheated. So likewise, this boy, if his skin is getting overheated, he might have had, my intuition says he has had pesticide exposure related symptoms. That's why I'm talking about it, and his parents would have to investigate this if they want to know if that is the root cause, because not just his parents, that other girls' parents also should investigate this, because these are chronically health harming factors when the exposure continues without our knowledge. I have the knowledge now that I have got exposure to certain pesticides and chemicals from my environment, and whichever ones are avoidable by me, I have stopped using them. But the pesticides that are not avoidable by me, which needs a municipality to work on, I have to complain to the municipality. Then only the municipality will find out ways to and alternatives to pesticide use that won't be health harming to the patient population or a group of population of a particular city, right? So likewise, this girl's parents and these boys' parents also have to do the same due diligence and investigation if they do not want to incur unnecessary health costs, and also if they want to truly resolve the issue at the root cause of the problem. Because what has mostly happened to all of us, I can also not just get sweating, intense sweating, I can also get redness of the eyes. Can you see my eyes are a little bit red from the irritation and exposure to the environment chemicals in my home? Because I don't know 100% whether it's just the pesticides that are causing my eye irritation. It could be pesticide plus other chemicals that could be causing this redness in my eye. But this redness is also a symptom of our body wanting to throw out a toxin from outside our body. So pesticide, actually the organophosphate pesticides that are most commonly used globally, this pesticide, when you have high exposure to the chemical, your body will have watery eyes, red eyes, your skin will sweat a lot, you might even start drooling when you are sleeping, you can have increased urination, you can have diarrhea, you can and what else is there, you can also, these are just the acute symptoms, but there's something called the chronic symptoms of poisoning. And usually again, doctors and healthcare providers normalize and think that chronic poisoning can happen to the people who are gardening and using pesticides in their gardening. So they think gardeners can have it, they think farmers can have it, because farmers use pesticides quite long term in their and have been using it for decades in their farming practices. They think someone who is working for the municipality or the pest control department, they can have chronic poisoning. These are the 4 groups that are generally perceived as the groups that can have chronic poisoning. But now globally people have to wake up that pesticide use, because it's so prevalent in our daily lives globally everywhere, that chronic exposure to pesticides and its health impact can be happening to any of us who have had long term, for many decades or many months, chronic continuous exposure to some kind of pesticides or multiple kinds of pesticides in our daily lives. And which is what is happening to this tiny boy. He and in the chronic poisoning, what starts happening is we can also develop motor neuron functions. We can also have certain pesticides can also give motor function problems, like I will get suddenly knee-jerk reaction, where my hand, if there is enough pesticide that has accumulated, pesticide accumulation has happened in the body, and the downstream signal transduction pathways and biochemical pathways that are released due to excess pesticide in my body can accumulate chemicals in this joint areas of my body. And suddenly, like the knee, I'm showing my elbow because I can't show my knee, and the knee jerk reaction is a literal term, but it literally happens to some people who are having pesticide exposures. And enough, if because of long term, say for 2-3 years, I have been exposed to some pesticide from my home environment or my local environment, that because I have inhaled and because I have absorbed enough pesticides in my body, one day, because of the downstream effect of it, the chemicals that accumulate in my joints can suddenly cause my joints to have like this movement. Like suddenly I will have this jerky movement on my knees or my elbows, on my wrists. These areas will suddenly go out of control. So the motor neuron functions aren't in my control. If I am also been eating very light, I'm not eating a lot of I have been, because I had some pre-cancer conditions going on, I've been eating some less protein products, because my inflammation in my body, because of the other symptoms that was going on in my body, caused me to eat less proteins. Because I was consuming less proteins, I started also experiencing muscular degeneration, and my muscles have become very weak because I have less proteins in my body. If my nutrition doesn't have enough proteins, if I am consuming little less of the proteins than I normally used to consume, I have weakened muscle functions. And because of weakened muscle functions combined with pesticide exposure in my daily life, what has happened is sometimes my hands like this, it will tremor, like how a Parkinson's patient's hands might tremor. But this can happen not just to an elderly person who's 70 years old, 60 years old, who develops Parkinsonism at that age. This tremor is happening to me. I'm a 40-year-old and it's happening to me and I know that it is happening every time I have exposure to high amounts of pesticides, because my body is already a little bit weak, my muscles are not as strong, and my muscles not being as strong, my body also, because of multiple reasons, was not able to absorb good nutrition from the food I was eating. There were multiple factors which led to these tremors developing in my body. But one instant thing that was happening, that anytime, say I went traveling, and while traveling, if the car has some pesticides that have been sprayed in the car, then immediately I'm getting these tremor like problems, and this same tremor and body control, movement, motility related health issues that can arise. She's describing it for her son as well, that she feels her son is not in his body, that he was not able to control his body movements. He was having jerky movements. But she didn't describe it as he's having jerky movements, but this is what I'm picking up from the story that she told in that video, because this is what happens to kids. Not just kids, it happens to adults as well. Any of us who have been exposed chronically to pesticides in slow doses also can develop pesticide poisoning in our body, which I have termed as slow chronic poisoning. And basically because it can be slow doses of pesticides that I'm consuming from the water, I'm inhaling from the air outside. Like say your local government is spraying a pesticide once a month in your area, or your gardener comes, and your gardener who maintains your backyard, he is spraying this pesticide once a month when he comes to do your garden and lawn maintenance. At that time, every once a month that he is spraying this pesticide, what is happening? He might have sprayed it in your garden, but air gets dispelled everywhere. So little bit of the microparticle that was sprayed in your garden, if your windows were open, French windows are open, doors are open, even if they were not open, if there was just a microscopic gap in between your windows, everything will cause whatever was sprayed outside your home to eventually a little bit of it will get dispersed inside your home. And this boy, being a small baby, he's going to inhale. For him, if I inhale the same air which has pesticides versus a 10-year-old or 1-year-old kid who is inhaling that same pesticide, for that kid who is 1 year old, same inhalation level will be more toxic because the child is a smaller sized child. Even a child who's half my size in weight, even that 10-year-old child who might be half or 1/3 my size in weight and height, even that child inhaling the same amount of toxin for someone who's half my size, at least half, at least their risk of health issues will be doubled because they're half my child, just simply based on weight wise comparison. If someone is not just half my size but they are also a small baby or a small 10-year-old 5-year-old kid, their immune system, their body's defense mechanisms itself are much different than an adult. It's not completely developed, because of which their symptoms will sometimes be much more higher than the symptoms an adult might be facing while facing the same inhalation toxin from the environment. Same thing, not just the environmental toxin that you are inhaling when a gardener is spraying or municipality is spraying or a parent itself is spraying in their homes to keep the homes bug free, but apart from just the spraying of these pesticides, once the pesticides have settled from the air, they're settling on our home surfaces. They might be settling on your table, settling on your floor, settling on the grass. So when the kid is playing in the grass in their backyard, and if they have, most of us in the summertime will have open-toed shoes, none of us, or we might even be walking and running barefoot in the grass, because running in the grass in a very clean environment is very healthy for a human being. But the same grass, if it was completely clean, pesticide free, chemical free, that could be healthy for us to walk on barefoot, that same grass is harmful for us to walk on barefoot or while wearing open-toed slippers or floaters, because every time we are walking on that grass, our foot is absorbing all the chemicals that have been sprayed on the grass. And it wasn't maybe directly sprayed on the grass, it might have been sprayed on a tree, but whatever floated around that tree eventually fell on the grass, and when I'm praying around the grass, it's absorbing in my skin, right? So via skin absorption, now you could have had the pesticide exposure. The third place where it is getting into our body is that same thing that fell on the grass, that fell on the ground, or it is when it's raining or when you're washing and watering your grass and your trees and plants. All of it is getting absorbed. After it gets absorbed by the soil, the watery thing, because most of these pesticides are water soluble, from when you're watering your plants and home garden and you have used pesticides there, or your municipality has sprayed pesticides in your neighborhood, everything eventually with the watering of the lawns and watering of the trees, all of it gets mixed with the water, goes into your underground water supply. If you have a home water supply which uses underground water supply as your source of water, you have now the same contaminated, pesticide contaminated water now coming through your taps, and this same water now you're using for taking a shower or for cooking your food. So now you have pesticide exposure from your food and water. The same pesticides you also use, now this pesticide contaminated water is also being used to clean your clothes, clean your linen, clean your curtains. All of this now gets into your clothes, and again toxin exposure happens because now it's present in your clothes as well. So I don't know for either of these kids what are their sources, but the most common sources are pesticides that are being used in their lawns, pesticides that are being used in their homes, pesticides that might have gone into their water supply, pesticides that are there in their clothes. And these are just the home environment related exposure for these kids. But other than home environment or local environment related exposure, say you go to the local park with your toddler because your toddler loves playing in the park swings and slides and wants to interact with other babies. So when you're taking them to the park, if your municipality is spraying pesticides in the parks also, same thing, the pesticides are going to fall on the ground, fall on the trees, fall even on the slide in which the child will be riding in the park. So while the child is riding, and most kids wear knee length clothes. Very rarely do kids nowadays wear fully clothes, and in the summertime we are not even wearing, sometimes kids don't even wear full, they are not even fully clothed in many countries. They are only wearing a small pant, they are wearing sleeveless clothes. So 50% to 100% to, not 100%, very rarely toddlers will be naked, but at least 50% to 70% of their body is exposed to the elements when they are playing outside. So what is happening? Anything that was sprayed in the air is also going to get absorbed. Anything when I'm sitting on a swing, if I'm just holding the swing metals, at a time also, whatever was sprayed around, if it is remnants of it is there in the swings, my hands are going to absorb it. Every time I sit on a swing, I'm a child wearing a frock, everything will get absorbed in my thighs. Every time I'm sliding down a slide, this used to happen to me as a kid. Now I remember, at that time I didn't know pesticides were being sprayed in my neighborhood, but I always used to find our local slides very dusty, and every time I would slide down it, sometimes my skin would get irritated as well. At the time I didn't realize it because I was a child. I'm talking about 40-year-old memory. But even then, these 30 years back, whatever happened to me when I'm sliding down a slide, it irritating my skin, or I'm feeling like I didn't used to like moving down certain slides because my hand would get irritated and things like that. Because while I'm sliding down, touching the slide sides, or having clothes where after the knee my entire leg is exposed to whatever dust particles are there on the slide, in that dust particle is also the pesticide particles present in them, because of which I'm getting this skin irritation. But skin irritation is only the first level of, can be both the first level, and skin irritation can also be the final level of pesticide poisoning related health issue. Because in the first level, when any contact toxin comes into contact with our hands and our skin, our body wants to reject it. That's why the irritation, it's a signaling system for the body to tell you don't touch this surface. That's why it's giving you that skin irritation. But say every day I go to this park, or every week my parents are taking me to this park and I'm sliding down the slide, and every week I'm absorbing a little bit of the pesticide, via my hands, via my legs, via my face, via inhalation, via multiple reasons I'm absorbing it. Now what's going to happen? Slowly the pesticide is accumulating in my body. And eventually, if enough of it has accumulated, it can also lead to organ damage, organ system damage, and eventually, if for 10 years, maybe if I have had exposure to these pesticides, after 10 years, I might even get cancer. That's why there are so many kids who are born nowadays with cancer problems at 10 years age, 5 years age, toddler age, infant age as well. Because their parents don't know that in their daily lives, pesticide exposures are happening and occurring quite prevalently in their lives without none of us realizing it. Because while for a child the skin irritation is ignored, or like this mother thought that her child is possibly having a mood issue, actually it wasn't just simply a mood issue. It's a mood issue because pesticide poisoning can also cause increased anxiety in us, because our brain chemicals get distorted because of pesticide exposure, which also causes either epilepsy like symptom, agitation like symptom, anger responses, because the kind of chemicals that get accumulated then in our body, they trigger these responses. And his body also not functioning very well, or he doesn't, if he seems like a very hyperactive toddler, this hyperactivity in the toddler is also pesticide exposure related. There's another few kids I have seen, even from 1 year, 2 year age to 10 year age, because nowadays in social media, many parents post things about their kids. And I have seen many kids, not just in US, but also in India or other global countries, where their kids have pesticide exposures happening to them. Some of their behavioral symptoms that are thought as only a behavioral health problem, but they aren't really just a behavioral health problem. It's a behavioral health problem or motor neuron function problem that is stemming from the root cause of pesticide exposure. So I hope this was educative, and the reason why I made this video is to make people aware that because these chemicals are so prevalent in our lives, we don't know from where they are coming into our body and how they are impacting our health, because they are very slowly impacting our health. It's not that one day the child will be very angry. This child, out of a whole month, he might be very calm child, collected child, best child in the world, but suddenly for 2 days in a month, if he's getting agitated like this, it means maybe once a month there is pesticides being sprayed in the neighborhood. If that same child is having a behavioral issue every week, it can mean that in his water supply of his home, the pesticides are present in the water supply. That's why every time he's drinking and has accumulated enough of the pesticide from the water he's drinking, food that has been cooked in this water that he's also consuming, or the water that he's bathing in daily, once enough of the pesticide accumulates in his body, then this mood related, motor neuron related, even epilepsy related symptoms or skin irritation related symptoms, this redness of skin related symptom, mood changes, sudden anger response, sudden anxiety response, all of these can get triggered because that trigger is happening on the day in which enough chemicals have accumulated to elicit this response. But until then, that doesn't mean that his exposure is happening just on that day. If that child is having a mood issue today where his face has gone red, he's having body control movement issues, he's hyperactive, and the mother can see that this is abnormal. That's why the mother wants to give him a timeout, that you calm down, control your emotions. But he can't control something that is happening out of an external stimuli. For him to have this control on his emotion that is based on an external stimuli, that external stimuli of this exposure has to go away, and an external stimuli that is on that day when he's having this mood issue, already he has accumulated possibly enough pesticides in his body that the chemicals are causing some brain issues, and then maybe he inhales a new air that was sprayed with this pesticide, and that extra toxin overload that happened, like there's a saying, right, that straw that broke the camel's back. That day, that extra inhalation that he's doing when he's going out in the garden, that extra bit of pesticide combined with the pesticide that's already accumulated in his body is giving that additional response. So that day's pesticide exposure is giving this additional response. But what is the root problem? The root problem is before that day, the whole couple of months or weeks of exposures that have accumulated in his body, both of which combined are externally giving this response of anger, agitation, motor neuron function, skin irritation, sweating, everything like that. This other kid is experiencing heightened sweat. She's also experiencing, like, she feels thirsty, and she's such a kid that she's a very kind kid. So when she is thirsty, instead of telling her parents or grandparents that I am thirsty, she says, are you thirsty? Because then if that other person says they are thirsty, they will both go and get a drink of water. So instead of her telling that I am thirsty, she talks in that way, because maybe in her home it's easier for her to care for, and her nature is that way, that she likes to care for people. So, and it's not that she's only thirsty, it's also that she's experiencing for the second kid's video, maybe I'll make another video about her analysis of what's happening to her. I'll just reference her in here, but because it will take me a little bit more things about her I want to talk about how she responds to things, because she's a different kind of a child. So that's why for her I have to make a different video. But normally all kids who are experiencing heightened thirst, excessive sweating, redness in the eyes, skin irritation, that child is also experiencing skin irritation problems, all of which are happening from her daily chronic exposure to the pesticides. And the best way to actually treat any of these kids and help them in not getting these symptoms repeatedly and not have any severe health repercussion eventually, the best way to prevent it is, as the saying goes, prevention is better than cure. So if slowly all the toxin sources that are giving them this pesticide exposure in their lives, if they can be slowly eliminated from pesticide exposure related steps, like if people can slowly step by step start weaning away the pesticide usages in their neighborhoods, in their homes, start checking their water supplies to see if their water supply needs to be changed. All these steps one by one you have to do slowly, because how the exposure to pesticides happen to these kids slowly over 2-3 years of their birth, the same way the detoxing also has to be slowly done. So one step at a time. If this particular kid has, say, 3 sources of pesticides, one in the water, one in the air, one from the park, then first in the park you might want to talk to the municipality to see if they will start doing some alternative measures than doing pest control the way they have been doing for many decades, because some of these places have now excess, and I'll make another video about this pesticide related thing also. I've already actually made previous videos on this, because I can continuously talk on this but it will confuse parents. All I'm saying is, please start becoming mindful. Please observe whether if it's happening from pesticide exposures, how you can reduce the daily exposure of these pesticides from your kids' lives, and you will automatically see if the pesticide exposure levels go down for the kid. Some of these mood issues, skin issues, organ damage issues, health issues, whatever you're attributing to a mood disorder may not simply be a mood disorder, but it could be a mood disorder combined with a pesticide exposure, or it could just simply be pesticide exposure, which if taken away from the kid, that kid will be a normal kid then. So I hope it was helpful. If you do have any questions and want some clarity on this, please drop a comment. I would be happy to answer it via other videos or replies to you. So thank you very much and have a great day.